Okay, so today we are doing a music production analysis of Dance the Night by Dua Lipa. And I did see Mark Ronson post about this song, I think on his TikTok, because he co-produced it. But what I'll do is I'll play through the entire song. And Kathleen, so if you see that link at the top, the Google Docs link, that's where we'll be writing the instrument list as we're listening to it at the start. And then that'll give you an idea of that initial listen of all the instruments coming through. And yeah, so we shall get started now. Let me know if you can hear this through your speakers. How is that? Could you hear that? Yeah? Okay, cool. Awesome. All right, well, let's do a run through and we'll see what we can find.
Watch me dance, dance the night away. My heart could be burning, but you won't see it on my face. Watch me dance, dance the night away. I'll still keep the party running. I want it out of place. Lately, I've been moving close to the edge. Still be looking my best. I stay on the beat, you can count on me. I ain't missing no steps. 'Cause every romance shakes and it bends, don't give a damn. When the night's here, I don't do tears, baby, no chance. I could dance, I could dance, I could dance. Watch me dance, dance the night away. My heart could be burning, but you won't see it on my face. Watch me dance, dance the night away. I'll still keep the party running. I want it out of place. When my heart breaks, when my world shakes, I don't play safe. Don't you know about me? I could dance, I could dance, I could dance. Even when the tears stop flowing, they're diamonds on my face. I still keep the party going, not one hair out of place. Yes, I can. Even when the tears stop flowing, they're diamonds on my face. Yes, I can. I still keep the party going, not one hair out of place. Watch me dance, dance the night away. My heart could be burning, but you won't see it on my face. Watch me dance, dance the night away. I'll still keep the party running. I want it out of place. When my heart breaks, when my world shakes, I don't play safe. Don't you know about me? I could dance, I could dance, I could dance, dance the night.
Okay. There's a lot of instruments in that. It's a very lush arrangement. It's actually kind of cool that we're doing this track a week after September by Earth, Wind and Fire, because I'm actually noticing a lot of similarities. And what do you reckon? Yeah. There's a lot of similarities and probably drew a lot of inspiration from that track or that era. So what's going to be interesting is if when we listen to it again, so we'll listen to it section by section, and yeah, it's interesting because think that kind of bass is definitely very prominent in Dua Lipa stuff. Definitely recently, with that "Don't Start Now" and with Ian Kirkpatrick producing. And I know for a fact that he actually used MIDI for that bass. That it was an MM Scarby bass from Contact that he used. I don't know whether this one's actually MIDI. I think this one might be actually real. But what's interesting is that that kind of sound has been very the Dua Lipa sound at the moment is very much like that. Uh, so it's going to be interesting to see when we listen to it in sections. So we'll start with the intro and move through whether they incorporate the same core rhythm thing that we talked about last time. So whether they introduce all of the key aspects at the start, the key hooks, so like the primary hooks, secondary hooks, the core rhythms, if they establish those at the start and then we watch them develop as it goes through. It's going to be very interesting to see. So let's go to the intro and try to just focus on that for now. Okay, so immediately they're establishing the key secondary hook that runs through the entire track. So if you actually listen to the string section, they're playing the, other than the vocals being the primary hook of the song, this string section in the background that's playing that that riff, that is the key secondary hook that runs through the entire track. So they're introducing that immediately in the intro, and they're also introducing the core rhythm, so the kick and the snare kick in halfway through the intro. So immediately you've got the core rhythm introduced and the key secondary hook, which very similar to September that we analyzed last week, they did the same things where they were introducing the core rhythm elements and the core rhythmic drivers off the bat. Now, the core rhythmic drivers, the mid-level harmonic rhythmic material that is present in every track ever created, you'll find a core harmonic rhythmic driver, which most of the time is mid-level range, but these ones tend to be quite a little bit higher. And what I also noticed here was that there was synths playing as well, which I didn't even write down at the start because they were so hidden during the arrangement. But in the intro, they're more open and you can hear them. So those synths will probably be present later on, but I just didn't hear them later on because I didn't focus in on them. But now that they're exposed, I can hear them better. So have a listen to the start again. So what's interesting is that they've started the track off with a drone. So if you listen to that, the very first instrument sounds like a synth drone that goes, it sort of glides up and then it hits on a drone note, which sustains through the entire section of the intro. And I think the reason why they've done that is because there's no bass yet in this section. So they're trying to basically establish a tonal center that everything else gravitates around for the start. So let's just listen to that again. Really focusing on that drone sound. It just stays the same the whole time, and then everything else kind of moves around it. If you listen to the other synths that they've got, those are playing kind of arpeggiated chords as well, more in the mid-level. So you've got the strings at the top, kind of pan right a little bit. You've got this drone that's just droning one single note, and then you've got this synth kind of chord happening in the lower registers in the mid-range kind of. So have a listen to that. Focus in on the synths. So the synths are kind of like they're almost like a pad that are held on the mid-level frequency range, doing a little bit of a motive, just a little fill. But for the most part, what they're trying to get the listener to concentrate on is the string hook, which is more of a secondary hook. So the three hooks, primary hook will be the vocal, and then the secondary hook would be this one, the string line, and then all the hidden hooks in the background will be like kind of like that synth that I have to really focus in on. And at the moment, the primary hook temporarily would be that string sound. So and if you can hear that, they've got claps on the 2 and 4, which are establishing a bit of a beat. This is probably going to be a song that's played in clubs. DJs would love that because the bass is not there. So they'll be able to grab that intro and they'll be able to place it over the end of another beat that they're playing and then easily transition the song into this song. And whether that's because Mark Ronson has a DJ background, like he's probably done that on purpose so that it's easier for the song to be DJ'd properly. So they've got the claps, no bass yet, and then the kick and the snare come in with the snare on the 2 and the 4, and then the kick on the 1, 2, 3, 4, I think. Okay, the kick's only on the 1 and the 3, which is very, very classic beat that was established in September by Earth, Wind and Fire that we analyzed last week. Is there a lower octave string or synth as well playing the top string melody? Let's have a listen. Yeah, you're right. So it's actually done in octaves, which is really cool because so the frequency field is obviously spread out more. So that key hook's being played at the top, which is really what people are focusing on. And then the lower end is filling out that lower end as well. So you've got, it's hard to say what the core harmonic rhythmic driver will be at this point. I'm pretty sure it is the string section. So if you noticed in September by Earth, Wind and Fire, the core harmonic rhythmic driver was the guitar and the piano. Those were playing the main rhythmic driver. In this one, it seems like it's probably going to be the strings, but we'll continue to listen. The core rhythm has now been established. The kick and the snare / claps has now been established. So that's going to be starting to play all through it. And then with the harmonic level in the mid-range, we'll have a look at what they're doing now in the verse. I think that's pretty much all of the intro covered, though. Okay. The only last thing I want to say about this intro is that they introduced the closed hat on the offbeat as well, which is a very classic disco type, house type beat. So in terms of the drums, they're actually playing something quite classic. So it's just that classic kick, snare / clap, and the offbeats closed hat. Whether they've programmed these, I mean, it sounds like they're programmed, but the closed hat specifically, whether those are programmed to feel like a humanized feel, probably. I know that these top producers definitely program their closed hats and their drums to feel like a real person is playing it. And if you notice right there, the transition just before the verse was the kick ended up picking up an extra hit there. So it was more like doom, 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 like that. So it did more kicks in the transition section. And then obviously the snare fill just before it. So snare, do, and a tom at the end, I think it was. So quite simple, but for what they've done here, that's all you really need because you're just getting ready to go into the verse. Now, what will be interesting is to see what they do with the transition in the verse sections and the verse turnaround sections, because if they keep repeating that same fill, that same drum fill, then you know that they're trying to emphasize that as a hook that is familiar to the audience, so that every time it happens, they're almost going to be training the audience for it to happen later on. I'm not sure yet whether they're going to be doing that or whether they shift it up and do some variation, but we'll have a look. Okay, so what's interesting is that the string section has dropped out for the start of the verse. Now, what's cool about that is that they're pulling that because they've introduced that in the intro, and it's going to come back in the chorus. So when it does come back, it becomes this huge event. By taking that out, they've taken out the higher end frequencies of those strings, which has really dropped the energy to a certain level. And what they're trying to do here is they're trying to emphasize the rhythm and the vocals more than any other thing. So they're playing with energy here. Let's just listen to the verse again, that section.
For the rise, turn the rhythm to the lights, diamonds under my eyes. Turn the rhythm up, don't you wanna just come along for the ride?
Okay, so in terms of pads, there's not really many pad instruments in it in terms of synths, strings, playing sustained material. They have a guitar on the left hand part of the panning that's playing a rhythm at this point, and that's kind of filling out the mid-level range, and that's providing more of the rhythm, the core harmonic rhythm, rhythmic driver in the harmonic instruments. But the drums are really taking this, and the bass are really providing that groove. So the core rhythm is being established here.
Diamonds under my eyes. Turn the rhythm up, don't you wanna just come along for the ride? My outfit's all.
Now, what's going to be interesting is whether the bass guitar plays a similar rhythmic motive to the string section at the start, because that is similar to what happened in the September arrangement by Earth, Wind, and Fire. They actually had the core rhythmic drivers in the guitar and the piano playing the same thing as the rhythmic drivers in the bass. So what will be interesting to hear when the strings come back in the chorus will be whether the strings follow the same rhythmic line as the bass is right now in the verse. Some real ninja stuff.
Find me under the lights.
Also, transition effect. It was like a what do you call it? Like a gliss of some sort, of like bells. It sounds like bells. Which, if you think about the movie, it's Barbie that this was made for. So I suppose if you even look at it from a sync lens, listen to the instrumentation choices for what they've decided to do for the movie. So they're trying to align it with the feeling of Barbie, which is what September by Earth, Wind, and Fire weren't doing. They were just doing a song because they wanted to do it, whereas this one is doing it for the purpose of a movie. So we'll see if we can find any more hints like that for sync purposes, any choices that they've made to be congruent with the movie. How is this so far? Like how are we going so far? Is everyone enjoying this so far? If you haven't, if you awesome. So with this song, because it was written for the movie, it is going to be interesting to see which instrument choices they've made to emphasize the feel of that movie, of the Barbie feeling. Because already, like these gliss sounds, they're quite. How do you even say it? Like, because Barbie in the movie, she's very I suppose she's very like posh and all that stuff. So it kind of makes sense to have something like that because it sounds posh. It sounds classy. It sounds almost like not a Disney film, but it has that Disney-esque sort of thing. So let's have a listen. Has a very classic musical feel. That's the best word to describe. Musical feel.
Find me under the lights, diamonds under my eyes. Turn the rhythm up, don't you wanna just come along for the ride?
Okay. Immediately, I know that Andrew Watt co-produced this. He's a really good guitarist. So I'm gonna, I don't know whether this is Mark Ronson playing guitar or Andrew Watt, but I have analyzed an Andrew Watt production before that he did for Dua Lipa. I forget which song it was, but it was a huge song. But he's got a lot of guitar work in his production for Dua Lipa that he did. So I'm going to assume that that may be Andrew Watt on the left playing guitar. And now we're going to switch to the vocals. Listen to the vocals. They're doing call and response here in the background vocals. And what I'm guessing is that, what I'm assuming is that in the movie, this scene is when they're dancing in this club, and this movie, this song comes in. And I remember there's multiple Barbies and multiple Kens all singing this song together and all dancing together. So it may be the lead vocal, and then I can't remember this scene, but the Barbies in the movie may be doing the call and response for the movie. So that's why it may sound like that. Let's have a listen.
Diamonds under my eyes. Turn the rhythm up. Don't you wanna just come along for the ride?
So as you can hear, like they're emphasizing certain words. So it's almost like Dua Lipa's singing the main phrase, and then the background vocals are just emphasizing particular words, particular phrases. And there's a reason for that. It's making it more punchy. Like, how does that make you feel when you hear it?
Turn the rhythm up. Don't you wanna just come along for the ride? Oh, my outfit's all
It's creating a feeling.
tight. Diamonds under my eyes. Turn the rhythm up. Don't you wanna just come along for the ride? Oh, my outfit's all tight. You can see my heartbeat tonight. I can take the heat, baby. Best believe that's the moment I shine. 'Cause
What's interesting is that they actually used a vocal pad for one of the background vocals, but for the most part, they're actually just emphasizing certain words and phrases. It almost makes it punchier on those sections. If those background vocals weren't there, it wouldn't be as punchy in that vocal line. It really lifts it. It makes you feel like it's going like this, like bouncing when those background vocals come in. That's the effect it's creating.
under the lights, diamonds under my eyes. Turn the rhythm up, don't you wanna just come along for the ride? Oh, my outfit's all tight.
Pad.
You can see my heartbeat tonight. I can take the heat.
So the lesson that we want to learn here is really selective background vocals. So choosing particular words, particular phrases to emphasize to create a feeling. Now, this won't work for every song. It's just a technique that we can put in our technique libraries to remember.
Oh, my outfit's all tight. You can see my heartbeat tonight. I can take the heat, baby. Best believe that's the moment I shine. 'Cause every romance shakes and it.
Okay. Are they doing just doubles, or are they doing harmonies?
My eyes. Turn the rhythm up. Don't you wanna just come along for the ride?
Are they doing harmonies, or are they doing just doubles of the lead vocal? Doubles, yeah.
Oh, my outfit's all tight. You can see my heartbeat tonight. I can take the heat, baby. Best believe that's the moment I shine.
Now, in terms of panning, it actually sounds like they're panned slightly to the right. Yeah, the harmonies on the ooze. So they're also using selective harmonies. So doubles, yeah. So what this does is if you look at it like energy, okay, so every time you add an element, it's adding energy to some extent. Now, when you add doubles, it creates a certain energy. It almost sounds like their doubles are almost slightly panned to the right. They're kind of, if you visualize it like a rectangle, this is the lead vocal in the center. The harmonies feel like, in my mind, when I'm visually picturing it, they feel like they're here. To you, it will look like here because it's kind of mirrored the zoom thing. Like in my mind, they're here. So when harmonies come in, it actually creates more energy than just doubles, because now with harmonies, you're actually creating more, I suppose you could call it conflict, because now you've got two lines that are not conflict. You're creating more like frequencies to think about. When you just do doubles, they're on the same frequency, but with harmonies, you're adding more frequencies. So it's creating more energy. So what they're doing is they're stacking the energy and they're selectively doing it to create energetic development. And that's just with the vocal. I think with the rest of the arrangement, it's very straightforward. You've got the kick, the snare, and they've started to introduce claps on the offbeats like that for more transitional elements.
Turn the rhythm up, don't you wanna just come along for the ride? Oh, my outfit's all tight.
Okay. So they've actually dropped the claps out of the 2 and 4, and now the claps are reserved just for that section. So in the intro, they actually had the claps on the 2 and the 4 consistently. Now they've actually pulled the claps out and they're doing on the turnaround of the phrase. And they've just got the kick and the snare. Now, I think this is intentional. In the movie, I'm pretty sure they all clapped on that part. So whether they did it because they wanted to be in line with the movie, probably not, because the dance would have been made after the song was made. So it was probably just done like to make it that dancey feel where everyone can dance along and do that together in the movie. I suppose we'll never really know because I haven't talked to Mike Ross. Maybe one day when I do, I can ask him specifically. But yeah, so I think the reason for that is to drop the energy down into just the snare and the kick, because the snare and the kick have more of a lower frequency, it feels like. So they've really tried to ground the arrangement down.
Eyes, turn the rhythm up, don't you wanna just come along for the ride? Oh, my outfit.
Now, if you can listen to the claps as well, they're also panned stereo. Like it sounds like they're stereo claps. They're not really center anymore. Or maybe they weren't even at the start. But the point is that the snare is in the center, and then when the claps come in, they're more panned wide. Also, these claps kind of sound like samples from Splice. They've probably got real claps as well that are on top of it, but they kind of have a splicey feel to it. I don't know, maybe not, but just have a listen again.
Diamonds under my eyes. Turn the rhythm up, don't you wanna just come along for the ride? Oh, my outfit's all.
I'm pretty sure I've got that clap sample on Splice. Anyway, so the the point is that these top producers also use Splice for certain things, but exactly, yeah, that there is extra verb on the claps as well. Good find, because like I think the purpose of that is to differentiate the claps from the snare, because the snare is very dry. Like if you ever listen to the snare, it's very dry, very foreground.
Diamonds under my eyes. Turn the rhythm up, don't you wanna just come?
It sounds like the snare is dry. It's in the foreground, but there's almost a tail of a little bit of verb. It sounds like it might even be panned, the verb, to give it like a bit of a pocket. But then when these claps come in,
For the ride. Oh, my outfit's.
way more verb, which in terms of foreground, background, the drier an instrument is, the more in the foreground it is. Exactly. It's more distant. It feels more distant. So the more dry an instrument is, the more foreground it will be. The more louder it is, the more foreground it will be. Now, these claps, they're quieter than the snare, and they're also more wet in terms of effects than the snare. So that means that they feel more distant. Not only that, they're also stereo, so they're panned more to the left and right parts of the frequency of the field, which means that when the listener's listening to it, it'll feel like the snare and the kick are more in their face, and then the claps are more like this thing that just happens. But the cool thing about it is that it's one of those things where whether they mixed it like this so that it feels like there's multiple people in the room, maybe that was why they did it. Because in the movie, when they're dancing, the claps are done by everyone. So it sounds like everyone is doing it from left to right in the stereo field. What's interesting, though, is that this song probably would have had to be mixed in like Dolby 5.1 stereo surround sound at some point. I don't know whether they actually do that for syncing movies or not, but it's just interesting. Or maybe the surround sound's only just for the vocals. I'll have to figure that out when it comes to movies in particular. But yeah, it's very cool stuff. So let's keep listening.
You can see my heartbeat tonight. I can take the heat, baby. Best believe that's the moment I shine. 'Cause every romance.
Okay. Something very cool that's very hidden. The lead vocal and the bass guitar are actually in call and response. They're actually doing calls, doing responses. Have a listen to the bass again. It's got more of a high end of this bass. So it has got the low end, but it is more in the mid to high frequency as well. And that's allowing it to punch through. And it's also allowing it to have a melodic aspect to it. Have a listen to this bass and vocal relationship. Because I spoke about this in the last weeks, where in classical music, a lot of the time, especially in Baroque music, the bass line and the melodic line, the lead melodic line, will actually flow together in counterpoint. So have a listen to this. It's in counterpoint, but it's also in call and response.
Diamonds under my eyes. Turn the rhythm up, don't you wanna just come along for the ride? Oh, my outfit's all tight. You can see my heartbeat tonight. I can take the heat, baby. Best believe that's the moment I shine. 'Cause
it's only really doing its extra filly parts with the melody and the bass when the vocal isn't singing. So the vocal will do a phrase, and the bass will be quite simple. It'll be more groove based, more rhythm based. And then once the vocal stops singing, in between phrases, the bass will do a little bit of a melodic fill to fill in that gap. And because it's more of a mid-rangey, it's got a mid-range feel as well as a low end, it punches through. So the audience and the listener will actually be latching onto that as the secondary hook in between the vocal, which is quite interesting. They've done that.
come along for the ride. Oh, my outfit's all tight. You can see my heartbeat tonight. I can take the heat, baby. Best believe that's the moment I shine. 'Cause every romance.
Okay, very subtle. I think they may even have an electric piano pad very hidden in the background to fill out the space. Let's have a listen. But if they do have that, a pad really acts as glue in an arrangement. So the purpose of that would be to glue the elements together, so to make it feel like it's more pieced together, like a glue. Let's have a listen. It's about here. If you look visually in the rectangle, it feels like it's here in my mind's eye, which would be here for people watching.
Diamonds under my eyes. Turn the rhythm up, don't you wanna just come along for the ride? Oh, my outfit's all tight. You can see my heartbeat tonight. I can take the heat, baby. Best believe that's the moment I shine.
Yeah, okay, so it comes in the second half of the verse. So the first half of the verse, no electric keyboard pad. Second half of the verse, it's there now. So very subtle. Most people listening to this, if there's been 400 million people listening to this, probably didn't even know that was there. But the purpose of it is it subtly raises the energy. It raises the energy in a subtle way without you even knowing. So that's what I would consider a hidden hook. And a hidden hook is really something that's, because all production's basically just made of different hooks. And a hidden hook is something that the general audience just wouldn't even be able to hear, wouldn't even know it's there, but it's there. And it builds energy. As the track progresses, have a listen to how the energy builds by how many elements are added over time. So you've got the verse at the moment, the first half of the verse, bass, kick, snare, closed hat, vocals. With each element that's added to the arrangement, as the arrangement continues through time, you'll notice the energy start to build. And it's very subtle, simple things like this pad that you can use to develop energy over time in your arrangements. So let's keep listening. Let's see what happens. I think that's pretty much the verse complete. Is there anything that I missed that anyone else has heard? Or do you think we've pretty much got everything from this verse? Is there a snap? Let's have a listen. Snap.
Eyes. Turn the rhythm up, don't you wanna just come along for the ride? Oh, my outfit's all tight. You can see my heartbeat tonight. I can take the heat, baby. Best believe that's the moment I shine. 'Cause every romance shakes and it bends.
I'm not sure. Where would the snap? Where is the snap that you're hearing? It's with the snare in the center. Interesting.
Wanna just come along for the ride. Oh, my outfit's all tight. You can see my heartbeat tonight. I can take the heat, baby. Best believe that's the moment I shine. Cause every romance shakes and it bends. Don't give a damn.
You know what? I've analyzed a lot of these sorts of tracks by Dua Lipa, the actual stem files, and what I've noticed is that in these types of tracks, it's very subtle, but they sometimes emphasize the. So if say you've got a snare on 2 and 4, what they'll do sometimes is they'll emphasize beat 4 with an extra layer of snare or snap or clap. And so the fourth to me may feel like it's actually more dense than the second. So when you listen to the beat 2, there's a snare. Yeah, okay, an extra on the fourth. Yeah. That's awesome that you guys picked up on that, because it's something that I've noticed in a lot of modern tracks, so modern productions, especially Ian Kirkpatrick, who kind of like him and Andrew Watt, I feel like they had a big role in this kind of sound being prominent in modern day productions with a lot of artists, is this kind of almost a not disco sound, but it's got those dancey disco elements, because they've drawn a lot of influence from tracks like September that we analyzed last week. And in their stem files, they literally have one snare on, say, the 2 and 4. Then they'll have maybe another snare on the 2 and 4. So that will be their main snares. It'll be 2 snares stacked as one. So it feels like it's one snare. And then what they'll do is on maybe the fourth beat, they'll emphasize the fourth by adding an extra layer. And another thing that these modern producers do as well is they emphasize the one beat as well. Now, I don't know whether they're doing this in this particular song, but if you know the song Diamonds by Rihanna, for example, they have a 4 to the floor kick drum on every beat, 2, 3, 4. But on beat 1, it emphasizes the 1 by adding an extra layer on the kick. And you can do that with a stomp, or you can do that with just an extra kick or whatever. But what I've noticed about these world-class producers is that it's very specific things like that they're doing to emphasize in a very subtle way particular parts of the energy. Now, this is more on a micro level. What I was talking about before with an element adding energy over time, you can look at it as a macro level. So if you look at the structure from start to finish, or to be start to finish on the screen, but it'd be like intro, verse, chorus, all of that, all lined up in a row. On a macro level, you'll have certain elements, and then as they add elements, the energy kind of goes like this. We got someone join in. Hold on. Hey, Tapora, welcome to the music production analysis call. We are currently analyzing Dance the Night by Dua Lipa. So this is a filmed call. So yeah, feel free to everyone is welcome to chat as well. But if you want to just hear me analyze, then yeah, welcome to do that as well. Okay, so with the energy, okay, so the macro energy of this song, when the intro, the verse, chorus, as it unfolds over time, elements will start to get added, and that adds energy. Now, the elements with the highest amount of energy are the bass, well, especially the bass, especially the sub bass, actually. So we'll see whether they put a sub bass in the chorus to open it up. But on a micro level, so that's macro. On a micro level, you also are adding energy as well. And that's what they're doing with this extra dimension on the fourth beat. So they're emphasizing that fourth beat for a reason. It's to emphasize the feeling. It's usually the beat 1 and the beat 4 that a lot of these dance 4 to the floor beats emphasize. So does that all kind of make sense as to why they're actually doing this? Because that's really what we really want to find out, as to why producers do what they do, not just what they're doing. Because if we know why they're doing it, then we're like, okay, cool. Like, if I want to create this in my own production, this feeling of more energy, I can do it on a micro level like this. I can add extra stuff on the fourth if I want to, extra samples. And it's actually really simple. It's just adding extra samples on the one that you've got. But what I've also noticed is that every sample will have a reason why they do it. Like, they won't just slap the same one on. Everything will have its own pocket in the frequency spectrum. So they might want a little bit more low end in the snare on the fourth, or maybe they might want a little bit more high end, a little more snap, which is what Marina noticed in that fourth beat. Or maybe it was on the second one as well. I can't remember. But the fourth beat does have an extra layer. So let's continue to listen to the verse, or leading into the pre-chorus and then the pre-chorus. So I think we've pretty much covered everything in the verse. We've kind of got the ninja moves that they've been using. So we've noticed that they actually have like the hidden pad element, which I think is just an electric piano to raise energy in a subtle way in the second half of the verse. And now they've got that extra layer on the fourth beat to emphasize the fourth beat. So let's see how they develop this in the pre-chorus.
I can take the heat, baby, best believe that's the moment I shine. Cause every romance shakes and it bends, don't give a damn. When the night's here, I don't do tears, baby, no chance. I could dance, I could dance, I could dance. Watch me.
Okay. I just got like a tidal wave of information right there. So there's so many similarities in terms of what they've done to achieve particular effects in comparison to the songs that we've already analyzed in last week, which was the Silk Sonic Fly As Me and September by Earth, Wind and Fire. So many things that they're doing that are similar to that. Now, I won't jump ahead of myself. We'll get to it. But the transition just before the chorus is literally what Silk Sonic did, where they've changed the core rhythm and created this event, this mini event that's basically like, this is about to happen. The chorus is about to happen. We'll get to that in a second, though, because a lot more has come through. So let's just listen to that again. If you notice straight away, they've started to introduce the string section. Now, the string section dropped out in the verse, but had been introduced in the intro. The string section in this passage, though, is more pad-based. So they're more sustained notes, more drones. They haven't introduced the melodic riff that they introduced at the start. So that's coming. We all know it. But they're going to reserve that for the chorus. And they're just going to build the tension here by using it more as a drone.
Believe that's the moment I shine. Cause every romance shakes and it bends, don't give a damn. When the night's here, I don't do tears, baby, no chance.
So as you can see, like, all they've really added in this section is those strings, but it just fills it out way more because it is sustained. Like, it's basically the rest of the arrangement is pretty much the same as what it was in the verse, but they've just added that extra layer.
Cause every romance shakes and it bends, don't the moment I shine. Cause every romance shakes and it bends, don't give a damn. When the night's here, I don't do tears, baby, no chance.
Okay, there's also a funky kind of guitar on the right-hand side that I'm hearing, and potentially shaky. Yeah, let's have a listen.
Shine. Cause every romance shakes and it bends, don't give a damn.
Yeah, there
tears,
is.
baby, no chance.
Yeah, awesome find. Yeah, so the shaker on the, it almost feels like it sounds like it's panned to the left a little bit, and it's only happening on certain beats. The EQ sounded different the second time that was sung. Which part was the part in terms of the phrase that you were talking about? If you do it in like quotations.
I can take the heat, baby, best believe that's the moment I shine. Cause every romance shakes and it bends, don't give a damn. When the night's here, I don't do tears, baby, no chance. I could dance, I could dance, I could dance. I shine, cause every romance shakes and it bends, don't give a damn. When the night's here, I don't do tears, baby, no chance. I could dance.
The third time, it sounds differently EQ'd.
I can take the heat, baby, best believe that's the moment I shine. Cause every romance shakes and it bends, don't give a damn. When the night's here, I don't do tears, baby, no chance. I could dance, I could...
Yeah, okay. I wonder if that was potentially maybe the way she sung it. I'm not actually sure. Because as the vocalist is singing, then the EQ can shift from how close she is to the mic, the direction of her mouth. So that's very specific find. Like maybe when she was singing it, it shifted a little bit, like the position of her mouth, or maybe it was a mixing thing. Let's have a listen again.
Believe that's the moment I shine. Cause every romance shakes and it bends, don't give a damn. When the night's here, I don't do tears, baby, no chance. I could dance, I could dance, I could dance. Watch me.
So when you heard the bass rhythm section losing some bass mid frequencies, was that nearing the end of the section? Like, did it feel like that there was a high pass, or I always get this mixed up, the one from the low end moving upwards? Okay, that's an awesome find, because what they're doing there, and this is a trick that a lot of dance music uses, just before the chorus hits, they've actually pulled out some of the low end in a very subtle way, and then so that when the chorus hits, they'll add the sub frequencies, which will then make it feel bigger. And this is what I was talking about before, being like the sub frequencies are something that hold a lot of energy, arguably the most energy than any other instrument. The sub frequencies and the bass frequencies will just have a lot of power. And it's one of the main things, especially in modern music, that producers use to emphasize energy in their arrangements. So if you notice, like in the verse section, they had a bass, but it was definitely more, it had low end, but it was more mid in terms of its drive. Holding off on those bass frequencies until the main chorus is something that a lot of modern arrangements do. Now, not all the time, but usually reserving the sub frequencies, like the lowest of the lows and the big bass for the chorus is going to be the thing that makes it more impactful when the chorus eventually comes, if the song needs that. Sometimes choruses actually suck. It's more of a vacuum effect where the chorus comes in and everything sucks out. But that's a different method. It just depends on the song at hand. But if you listen, when we go to the chorus, will probably notice that the sub frequencies will come in at their most powerful when the chorus hits. Let's have a listen.
No chance. I could dance, I could dance, I could dance. Watch me dance, dance the night away.
Okay, I'm feeling and I'm hearing a lot more sub in that chorus. That's great ears to pour it, because we've been mostly focusing on the musical elements. So it's awesome that you're reminding us to focus on the technical, the more like, what's it called? Like frequency elements, all that sort of stuff. The more mixing elements of this track. So I hope I'm pronouncing your name right, by the way. So let's continue. Let's listen to that pre-chorus again and see if we can notice anything else. I noticed a guitar riff on the right hand side pan. So we had a guitar to the left pan, it was doing more like your strummy chords, and it was consistent. Now on the right hand side, we've got almost like a funk guitar on the right, very similar to September by Earth, Wind and Fire that we analyzed last week, where they use different guitars for different purposes and they were panned in different ways. So they're not panned in the same area. They're panned in different ways. So let's have a listen to that.
Baby, best believe that's the moment I shine. 'Cause every romance shakes and it bends, don't give a damn. When the night's here, I don't do tears, baby, no chance.
So it's playing a hook in itself. It's playing a secondary hook. The guitar pan to it'll be this side on your, if it in terms of the reflection, but it's to the right hand side of the frequency spectrum of the rectangle. If you listen to it visually in your mind's eye, guitars here, the electric rhythm guitar, funk guitar. So it's going dun 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 dun, dun like that. It's playing a bit of a secondary motive, hook that's a call and response to the vocal. Very subtle. Most people wouldn't be able to hear it, the general audience, but it's doing something.
Don't give a damn. When the night's here, I don't do tears, baby, no chance.
It's creating a bit of a funk because it's also it's almost like a counter rhythm. Now, you know how I mentioned before how elements, as they're added, create energy. So over time, as you add each element, it'll start to create more energy. You can also do that with counter rhythms. So you've got your core rhythm here, which is the kick and the snare. We've already established that. You've got the bass, which is also part of the core rhythm. It will flow with that rhythm. That's all singular unit. Everything else will be gravitating around that core rhythm. When something doesn't gravitate around that core rhythm, it's a counter rhythm. And the counter rhythms are usually going to be creating healthy conflict. And with that healthy conflict comes more energy. So if you notice in modern arrangements, as more elements get added, sometimes a lot of these producers will add high-end percussion elements or rhythmic elements in the center, the mid-level center, pan to the left or right, which will be counter rhythm elements, which is exactly what they've done here, I believe. And Marina mentioned a shaker before as well that's been added, and that's also doing potentially a counter rhythm element, but it might even just be accenting certain beats, which is another thing that a lot of these producers do, which is accent certain beats, which we established before. So let's have a listen to that again. Does anyone have anything else they want to cover about this section that they're noticing before I press play again? Because we're on a roll. We're on an absolute roll here. All right, let's keep going. Let's have a look what they got here.
Shine, 'cause every romance shakes and it bends, don't give a damn. When the night's here, I don't do tears, baby, no chance. I could dance, I could dance, I could dance. Watch me dance, dance.
Okay, so it's really cool, isn't it? More active drums in this section. What I've noticed in this, as it moves into that section just before the chorus, the pre-chorus moment. So what we established last week is that, especially in the Silk Sonic one, when you drop the core rhythm and create a mini moment before the chorus hits, to almost say to the audience and train the audience to say, to think in their minds, or not think, but feel in them, we're about to get to the chorus. That's, I think, what they're achieving here. And when we listen to the entire track, it's going to be interesting to see whether they repeat this moment before each chorus. Because if they do that, then they're training the audience to know that when this happens, the chorus is about to hit. So let's have a listen there.
When the night's here, I don't do tears, baby, no chance. I could dance, I could dance, I could dance. Watch me.
Okay, a lot of stuff is happening, a lot of change is happening, which if you look at a track, almost like you're wanting to create expectation in the audience. You want them to feel like that there's stuff that they're familiar with. A lot of stuff that they're familiar with has already been established. They're already in the groove, they're feeling it. But when this section comes in, they're playing with the audience's expectations. They're putting a little bit of contrast there. Exactly. So the core rhythm has changed in this section, just this little section. And that means that when the core rhythm comes back, it'll really hit harder. Because now that they've created that contrast, even if it's just for this small section in the track, if they just kept that same beat flowing through the entire thing, it wouldn't have had the same effect in the chorus when the chorus eventually hits. We'll listen to that section again.
I don't do tears, baby, no chance. I could dance, I could dance, I could dance. Watch me.
It's going to be interesting to see, is the bass following the kick? As the bass gets more active, does the kick get more active? Because usually the kick and the bass are very linked and intertwined, and that's what makes the core rhythm. They usually flow as one. Yeah. So they've shifted here, and they've become like almost like a singular unit. Let's have a listen.
I don't do tears, baby, no chance. I could dance, I could dance, I could dance. Watch me.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So the top line in the song is also smoothing out, which creates that contrast, which we're all songwriters here. That contrast is key a lot of the time. If you've got a chorus that's more rhythmic, to have more of a sustained vocal before the chorus creates a lot of contrast, a lot of interest. Sidechain. So is there sidechain in this section? Potentially, because it is a probably actually, because it's one of those dance songs. So you've got the bass that's playing underneath the kick drum, which is the 1, 2, 3, 4 on every beat. So whenever the bass is intertwining with that kick, there's probably a light sidechain on there as well.
When the night's here, I don't do tears, baby, no chance.
And I think that, I mean, obviously sidechaining is quite, I don't know whether people digital software would have used sidechain. So like in the September track that we analyzed, they probably weren't using a sidechain. It's more, I think it's more of a modern invention that was utilized in a lot of house music, dance music from the 90s onwards. So a lot of modern tracks use that sidechain, I think, because there's just so much bass to handle. There's a lot of sub, which is interesting. And as we all know, sidechain is used to make sure that the bass and the kick have their own pocket in the frequency spectrum. But it also creates quite a bounce as well. When sidechain's used, it does create more of a bounce, I think, especially in songs like this.
When the night's here, I don't do tears, baby, no chance. I could dance, I could dance, I could dance.
Okay. Do you remember if you've watched the the flute sounds or like bells or something? I don't know what they've used. So there's two things I want to say about this. Number one, if you remember in the Silk Sonic track that we analyzed last week, when they did this very method, so they used that method of like pulling the instrumentation back, changing the core rhythm. Do you remember in that song, everything flowed as one? It felt like everything was a single unit. it almost like every instrument like gravitated towards this, like this, and it all just worked as a team. They've done that with this fluty sound. I don't know what the sound is, but if you listen to the bass and that sound that's in the high end, it almost feels like they're flowing together, even though it's quite a frantic melodic passage that it's doing. It does sound like that all of the instruments are flowing together with that. And the other thing I wanted to say about this interesting flute sound is that a lot of these modern day tracks, especially today, because it's so hard to create a track that has unique sounds in it. Because if I suppose if you just make it sound like classic tracks, it's people are like, oh, it's already been done before. So a lot of these top level producers will always put in little elements, little aspects that are unique to the track that it is, that you won't be able to find anywhere else. You can't find it on Splice. You can't find it on any sort of sample download packs or whatever. They try to craft a unique sound for the track that they're doing. And I've noticed that most top producers will do that in their tracks. They'll try to put in elements that are unique purely to that track, and that's it. You can't find those sounds anywhere else. So maybe that's what they've done here. I'm not actually sure, but maybe it is just a Splice sample. Who knows? But the point is that when you're creating your own productions, it is very good to keep in mind that having that in mind. Like, can I create a sound that's purely unique to this track and you won't be able to find it anywhere else? Because that's what this sounds like when what they've done with this sound. We don't even know what it is.
No chance. I could dance, I could dance, I could dance. Watch me. I could dance, I could dance, I could dance.
I'm just going to keep repeating that and just listen to what they're doing here.
I could dance, I could dance, I could dance.
There's a few crashes on the right-hand side. A xylophone, yeah, it's almost like that, isn't it?
No chance. I could dance, I could dance, I could dance.
It's interesting because it sounds like there's a xylophone sort of thing. It's panned slightly to the right and it's doing a motive. And it almost sounds like they've got this almost weird effect sound that's also moving up with it. So it sounds like they're one sound. It's cool because the bass moves upwards with the vocal, and then that xylophone sound feels like it's falling. Yeah, it almost feels like it's in the movie. So if you link the song to the movie again, this is the dance scene, and in this section, I can't remember what happens like exactly, but there is probably confetti and stuff coming down from what I remember. So maybe that sound is to represent that moment in the movie, because it sounds like confetti. So having that in relation to the movie, sparkles, yeah, it's very sparkly, very Barbie, if you will. So yeah, so it's just interesting, always keeping in mind what elements have they chosen on purpose to reflect the movie aspect. Now, what they've done here as well is they've really dropped out that core rhythm, and it's just the kick, I think, in this section, is it?
Tears, baby, no chance. I could dance, I could dance, I could dance.
Ah, okay. So they've moved the kick from the 1 beat to the 2 and the 4 at the start. So it's created this totally different feel. And it almost creates this feeling of anticipation because you're missing that 1. You're missing that powerful 1 beat and that 3 beat you've got so used to. They've inverted. They've actually used inversion, which is really cool. So that creates that anticipation, but then when they add extra kicks, it all of a sudden creates this feeling like something's about to happen. The momentum's rising. Listen to that again.
Tears, baby, no chance. I could dance, I could dance, I could dance.
So it's like 1, boom, kick. 2, 1, kick. 3, kick. 1, doom, doom, doom. And then it bangs. So they're missing the 1. which is it's so cool because I was literally talking about this before, where the one beat carries a lot of emphasis, a lot of importance to the listener. So when you remove that one, it creates this vacuum effect, which is exactly what this has done. It's so cool. Is there anything that I'm missing here? Syncopated hit 2, yeah. Which again, like with that syncopation, we haven't really been hearing that in the drums yet. So to introduce that in this section creates that contrast. It creates that feeling like we're going somewhere, something's happening.
I don't do tears, baby, no chance. I could dance, I could dance, I could dance. Watch me dance.
Now, I want to emphasize the point here that of how they've used space and different elements coming in at different times. Because if you can hear that, that almost sounds like a bass slide at the end, just before the chorus. Exactly. They drop the one.
I could dance, I could dance, I could dance. Watch me dance.
So smart. So Marina's just said, then they drop the one in the chorus so that that's so the vocal can shine through.
Dance, I could dance, I could dance. Watch me dance.
Now, another thing they've used when it comes to foreground, background. Yeah. That's awesome. So what's interesting is that listen to the vocal effects that they're using as well. So in terms of the mixing side of things, the vocal line is very sustained, which we've established as in a songwriting aspect circumstance that creates the contrast in the melodies. But as they're sustained, they're also harmonized, which creates more energy. And with that, they also have a lot more effects starting to develop. Now, I like to call this vocal effects form because you've got a structure, you've got verse, chorus, pre-chorus, chorus. You've got these different parts of the structure. And as the structure develops, the effects have their own form or a sub form within that structure, within that larger form. So as the vocals continue, you'll notice that the effects will develop with those vocals. So if you notice, they've used contrast here again in the mixing. So they've actually got a lot of effects in the pre-chorus building. It gets more and more verby, feels almost more distant. And then when that vocal comes in with the lead vocal, the harmonies drop out, the effects drop out, the lead vocal comes center, dry. Completely, like, I don't know if it's completely dry, but it feels like it's fully dry in your face. And then everything else drops out. The instrumental drops out, harmonies drop out, effects drop out, and it's just Dua Lipa singing dry. And that creates this vacuum effect. It's this huge atmospheric build. Everything's building towards this moment. And then it just sucks in. And then it's just her voice. So that when the beat kicks back in, it's this huge moment. Let's have a listen to that again.
I could dance, I could dance, I could dance. Watch me.
Boom, vocal throw. They've done a vocal throw, which is the mixing term for it, which is like the end of that phrase, it throws the reverb. So it feels like that the vocal is shouting down a hallway. It just goes like that. And then it goes, sucks in, cuts out, dry vocal. Very cool effect. Very good use of contrast in the mixing aspects. Yeah, so a vocal throw is like when the vocal is sustained, or like say a vocal sings a word, and then say for a selective word. So in this particular case, they've used the word dance.
Baby, no chance. I could dance, I could dance, I could dance. Watch me.
Okay, so when she sung dance, all the other words have their own bit of reverb. Earlier on, it was mainly dry, the vocal, but in this particular part, when you put a vocal throw on on a particular word, like this one has dance, she sings dance, and if you look at it visually in your mind's eye as the DAW, so picture Dua Lipa's vocal sings dance. Picture it almost like they've automated the vocal to go up. They've either automated the reverb for the vocal to go up, or they've added a different reverb, so they've actually chopped it, grabbed the vocal, placed a completely wet reverb on it, and then created its own track with its own reverb for that, and then probably bounced it down to make it an effect, a vocal effect stem. Exactly, yeah. So it has a huge reverb tail. And so what they've probably done is they've got the lead vocals singing dry, then they've got their effects processing that's automating depending on where they want to have more reverb at any given time. But then for moments like this, that is kind of this big event, they may have even grabbed a separate track to then create that word to have a lot more reverb, which is more of a reverb tail, a lot more wet, a lot more like all the different dimensions in the reverb have been moved to make it sound like it's a long tail. And what they've probably done is they've probably automated it off right when she starts to sing. They would have cut it off with automation, either volume or EQ, with like a filter. They would have filtered that out. So let's have a listen to see whether they've done that.
I could dance, I could dance, I could dance. Watch me dance.
Okay, they've let it tail off a little bit, but it doesn't have as much impact. So with the vocal throw, she sings dance. The vocal throw comes out like this. Like picture it like the reverb is just like this. And then as her lead vocal is coming in here, if you look at this as like time, reverb's flowing in space, and then the automation would have been pulling it down like this. So by the time the lead vocal hits, the reverb would be a little bit more subtle, so that when the vocal comes in, it feels like it's more exposed. Now, a lot of tracks would have actually just automated the reverb off completely, so that when the vocal comes in, it's just boom, it's just there. But it sounds like there that they've actually left a little bit of subtle reverb remaining for that tail just before that vocal comes in.
I could dance, I could dance, I could dance. Watch me dance.
What's cool about these kind of productions is when you have a look at the stem files of ones like these, they'll have very cool placements of their samples and their elements and stuff like that. Like there's one point there where the closed hat plays on one beat, but then it just falls off. And I came up with a name for this technique that these producers use. I mean, I use it as well all the time, but like I just found it in a lot of these modern day productions. I call it the scattered randomized loop technique. It sounds kind of crazy, but what they do is it literally feels like, and it seems like when you look at these stems, that they literally grab random elements, random samples, and they place them in different places until it feels right. That's sometimes what it feels like. And especially with these transition sections like this one, you can do very cool stuff like this. I've definitely done it in my own productions, and when you pull it off and when you get it right, it can take a little bit of time sometimes with the trial and error, like you put the samples in different places and you play different things. But when you nail it, these transitional aspects just before the chorus can be huge, and they can really create that contrast you're looking for. So has anyone got anything else to mention about this particular section that we're listening to right now before we get to the chorus? Quite a we've actually been here for an hour already, and we haven't even got to the chorus yet. There's been so much information in this one we've been learning. Quite incredible. All right, let's continue.
I could dance, I could dance, I could dance. Watch me dance, dance the night away. My heart could be burning, but you won't see it on my face. Watch me dance, dance the night away. I'll still keep the party running. I want that out of place.
Okay. Straight away, vocal dry in the center with selective vocal form effects. So you'll notice that there's wet effects on certain phrases that come in to emphasize certain words, certain phrases. You also have selected harmonies. I'm pretty sure this one's like more of a stereo vocal. They've got doubles on the left and right, I think, for this section, which they usually do in choruses for these types of songs, types of pop songs. The string riff has finally come back. Yeah, exactly. They finally introduced the string hook that they had at the start. It's now returned, and it's this big moment, and you can really feel it. So they've introduced that, but in terms of the actual drum rhythm, it's quite consistent. There's definitely more sub bass, which we mentioned before. There's definitely more sub bass now, so it feels heavier, feels bigger. And yeah, I think let's listen because we're finally here. I want to see whether the bass line and the string riff flow as one unit, because we mentioned this before.
I could dance, I could dance, I could dance. Watch me dance, dance the night away. My heart could be burning, but you won't see it on my face. Watch me dance, dance the night away. I'll still keep the party running. I want that out of place.
So, do you think that the strings are flowing with that bass? Because I think they are. I think in terms of rhythm, the strings feel like they're definitely on the like a similar rhythm as the bass, accentuating certain parts of that bass line and vice versa. Let's see if the vocals are in line with the bass.
Watch me dance, dance the night away. My heart could be burning, but you won't see it on my face. Watch me dance, dance the night away. I'll still keep the party running. I want that out of place.
Okay. There is a little bit of contrast between the vocal and the bass line because there is a sustained section in the lead vocal, but sustained phrases. But I think for the most part, when it comes to core rhythm specifically, so the main rhythm that all the elements gravitate around, think of it like a gravitational center. This groove is literally what all the elements will just suck into. Like it's almost like this is the core of the world, and the world is just stuck to that. It feels like a lot of the time with core rhythm, instruments don't have to follow the core rhythm exactly, but a lot of the time what they'll do is they'll accent certain parts of that core rhythm, and then they might flow off into their own little world, and then they'll suck back in again and then flow back out again. And in terms of energy, this is energy on a micro level. What it creates is almost like a breathing effect. And after analyzing, I don't know, hundreds, if not thousands of songs, this breathing effect is usually in the best arrangements. It'll feel like there's this pulse that's happening with the energy. And a lot of that pulse is because of the interaction between the rhythms and how they flow as one, and then they kind of go off a little bit and they come back. It's very cool stuff. And when you notice it in your music production analysis, as you keep doing this, you'll notice it in every song. Literally every song ever created has a core rhythm that everything gravitates around. If the track doesn't have have any drums, the core rhythm will be the core rhythmic harmonic driver. So it'll be the mid-level instrument that is the core rhythm. So let's keep listening to that chorus, see if we can notice anything else.
Dance, dance the night away. I'll still keep the party running. I want that out of place.
another vocal throw at the end of the chorus to create that transition. This time they've used more creative effects with a delay and a reverb on that vocal throw.
Dance the night away. I'll still keep the party running. I want it out of place. Lately, I've been moving close to the edge.
Again, suck the instrumentation out, have the lead vocal with more effects, and then it sucks back into the beat again. So as you can see, they're doing that strategy again where they're pulling out the instrumentation, creating that unexpected feel before the expected stuff comes back in. Now, how are we going for time? We have been here for over an hour now. Do you want to keep going? Do you want to keep seeing what happens with this, or do you think we should end it here? Because we have learned a lot from this track. Literally within, what, a minute? It's only been a minute of this track. Because we can keep going. Like this will develop, and it will be less. It will be less. There'll be less to actually look at as it progresses, because there's only going to be minor energetic changes, I'm going to assume. So we'll keep going through. We'll do like a fire. What do you call it? Like a rapid fire approach. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we'll do a rapid fire approach, and we'll see what we can find. So let's keep listening. Okay. Reverse crash, or not a reverse crash. It was more of an orchestral like crash throw. It's one of those, you can get them on Splice, they're everywhere. It's just like a crash that kind of feels like it transitions. It's an alternative to white noise, because white noise is so like, it's done so many times in tracks from the 2010s that I think a lot of these modern day tracks try to do stuff that's not white noise. So with this one, they've used crash. An alternative to that is white noise, where it kind of moves over like an effects thing. They're really showing the squeaks in her voice. Interesting. Let's have a listen. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, the squeaks in her voice. They haven't really tried to. They've probably left that more as a stylistic thing, which is really just the choice. I guess it's really a choice in the vocal production. Are you going to leave those, or are you going to re-record and not have those squeaks? But stylistically, they must have just wanted to go with that. But let's keep listening to it.
Dance the night away. I'll still keep the party running. I want it out of place. Lately, I've been moving close to the edge. Still be looking my best. I stay on the beat. You can count on me. I ain't missing no steps. 'Cause every romance shakes and it bends. Don't give a damn.
Okay, verse 2, pretty straightforward, similar to this first verse. But this time they've actually introduced the strings earlier. So as you can notice, like they're using the strings as a key energetic tool to develop the energy. And it's doing a counter line now. So it's not just doing, it's still doing pads, but it's doing more of a motif on top of it. Very similar to before, using that as the setup for the chorus. So they've trained the audience now. I'm trained. The second I heard that, I was like, okay, chorus is about to happen. So they've trained the audience now.
Watch me dance, dance the night away. My heart could be burning, but you won't see it on my face. Watch me dance, dance the night away. I'll still keep the party running. I want it out of place. When my heart.
Okay, so what I'm looking out for in the chorus 2 is how they've developed the energy to differentiate it from chorus 1. The immediate thing I heard was they have more background vocals, which is it's a very good trick to use in modern day productions. Adding more ad libs, more background vocals as the track progresses in energy to develop the energy. Another trick that they use a lot of the time is more counter percussion instruments, which I don't think I could hear any immediate ones. There might be some hidden counter percussive instruments that are there to develop the energy.
But you won't see it on my face. Dance the night away. My heart could be burning, but you won't see it on my face. Watch me dance, dance the night away. I'll still
Yeah, they've got a shaker in the second half of this chorus. So they've started to add more counter percussive elements to the rhythm to fill out the frequency spectrum and to add more energy. So just a couple extra elements added in that chorus too.
party running out one out of place. When my heart breaks, when my world shakes, I don't play safe. Don't you know about me? Shakes, breaks, out of place. When my heart breaks.
It's interesting that they've opted for the gliss sound over the white noise transitions and the crash transitions. I mean, they used a crash transition before, but for the most part, it's more of that gliss sound, which it's very in line with the Barbie movie, like more of that musical type feel.
Party running out one out of place. When my heart breaks. When my world.
Okay, very interesting here. What they've done in this bridge section is they've kept the beat consistent, but now they've got both string lines that they've introduced now in call and response. So you've got the one that was in the pre-chorus that was doing the da, 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 da. That one is here. It's panned left now. And the main riff is now more in the center pan right. And what they've done is they're actually only playing a little bit of that riff just to tease you. And they're not playing the whole thing. So it goes a little bit of the riff of the main secondary hook motive in the strings. And then they're doing more of the sustained strings on the left-hand side from the pre-chorus. And now they've mashed them together as one. What's cool about that is that we did notice that in the September arrangement with Earth, Wind and Fire, is that they did that exact thing where by the end of the arrangement, they started to combine the hooks that they've actually already introduced as one unit. And this is the repurposing principle at play. So they've used call and response and repurposing principle. They've started to repurpose what they've already introduced. And as the track develops, once you've got your key hooks and you've created them, you can find creative ways to repurpose things as your track progresses. And you don't have to make it hard on yourself. Like the main hard part is actually not even really hard, because when you sit down and you do it and you create those key hooks, once you've got those, that's most of the work done. Then it's just a matter of developing that over time and just developing the energy over time. It doesn't need to be hard. So yeah, it's just awesome. Okay, we're going a completely different place here. The instrumentation's definitely fallen out. They've got a totally different feel. They've got the drums just playing. The melody's shifted in the song. They've taken us a different place. The strings are kind of mid now. They're not high anymore. And they're kind of providing this pad-like effect. I think the reason why this section works with the pads is because the vocals are doing something in contrast with those pads. The vocals are doing quite a rhythmic, bouncy melody, and the pads, and they're also panned left and right, like they're doubled. Pads just sustained, the beat's still going, but that's why they can pull it off, because the vocals are actually providing the main rhythm here that you're bouncing to, which is interesting. The vocal is a rhythmic instrument in itself and can provide that feeling in the instrument, in the listener. So they've almost focused the listener onto the vocals to be the main rhythmic feeling, if you will, which is really cool.
Watch me dance, dance.
Just before that final chorus comes in, as you can notice, they've done the double clap. that is a hidden hook or a secondary hook. So they've trained the audience so far to do that, and they've used that as an entrance hit just before the chorus hits to be like, this is about to happen again. The chorus is about to happen. We've trained you to want to be able to do this on the dance floor.
Watch me dance, dance the night away. My heart could be burning, but you won't see it on my face. Watch me dance, dance the night away. I'll still keep the party running. I won't get out of place when my heart breaks. When my
The Yes I Can, which is that the part within the bridge? Oh, yeah. I noticed that. Yeah. So what they've probably done there. So to me, what they've done to make that sound almost more vulnerable, delicate, is, yeah, it's lots of air. So I think what she's doing is she's actually singing very close to the mic. Yes, I can. Yes, I can. Like, so the closer she is to the mic, the more intimate it'll feel. And it's also in the way that she's singing it. It almost sounds like she's just woken up from bed and she's kind of just, she's singing in a way where she doesn't have the full power of her voice. So immediately, I think what she's doing is she's singing closer to the mic like this. Yes, yes, I can. Yes, I can. Not as much energy coming through. And they may have done some stuff with the EQ and stuff as well. I'm not actually sure. But they've also made it very dry. And because the background vocals have effects on them, then it stands out a lot more as well. So keep the party going, not one hair out of place. Yes, I can. Let me taste that flowing that down. Yes, I can. Yes, I can. Keep the party going, not one hair out of place. A lot more air in the vocals, so they've probably EQ'd more of the high end to give it that sparkle, and then have it dry in the center, and then the other vocals are panned left and right, more wet as well. So that vocal really stands out when she does that. So it's a mixture of the mixing that they've done as well as how she's sung it, and the proximity to the mic as well when she sung it. Yeah, I think that when it comes to the sound of a vocal, so the way that I was taught anyway was it's basically like you do your EQs first and then you do your compressions underneath that. So when the compression is put on the vocal, that will be emphasizing the EQs. But compression also has, it's used obviously to kind of like cut off the peaks, or like to minimize the peaks in the vocal so that everything sounds consistent, a consistent level, so that you can hear everything clearly. But another role of compression is also to add character and tone. So yeah, in terms of this, they may have done both. They may have EQ'd it in a certain way to create more of that airy feel. And then when they add compression, if they have added compression, which they probably have, because that sounds quite consistent in the vocal. If you listen, if the vocal is with compression, if you can hear something out the front and it's very consistent, it means it was either recorded very well with compression, or especially with vocals, because vocals are so much like this, their peaks are all over the place. So that's why vocals are some of the hardest things to actually mix, is because of a lot of the time their peaks are so, there's so many peaks. So if the vocal is consistent and out the front, it means they would have either gain staged the vocal, which they would have done. They usually gain stage the vocal first to make sure that the vocal is consistent, and then they automate it, and then they use volume and automation. Sorry, so it's gain staging, volume and automation. Once the vocal sounds consistent without compression, because the compressor's role is to basically do that same job just automatically. So once you've gain staged, you've done your volume automation or gain automation, then EQ the vocals, or you EQ the vocals and make sure that everything's sitting right. Then you compress to make sure that everything is maintained. Because when you do compression, when you do EQs, that'll slightly alter the volume of the vocal as well, because EQ is shifting volume levels on different frequencies. So once you do that, you need to make sure that you're matching your volume, your original volume, as you are EQing, because you'll be adding volume with EQ if you're doing any boosts. And then with the compression, that's basically grabbing everything and just smoothing everything out. If you're using it to smooth out the gain, the peaks, and it will make it feel like it's consistent within the mix. Then, if you want to add compression for tonal purposes, or to give it more like of character or more, body or weight or whatever you want to achieve with the compression, that's when you can use that. So I kind of went on a tangent there. I don't know whether you found that useful, but compression, limiting, that's kind of that's the stream of in terms of the channel strip. That's the stream that you'll kind of flow through. Another thing is obviously saturation, which is very important in top mixes as well. I think so. Yeah, I think with pop music as well, especially, in all mixes as well, they use saturation, very light saturation. So not on all the things. It depends on the track. Like all the stuff that I'm saying, it depends whether the track actually needs it, because a lot of the time you may record, say, like a guitar line, for example, and maybe you don't need compression on the guitar line because it's already consistent in the mix. What you're doing is you're listening for whether an instrument actually needs to be more consistent. Like if I was listening to this mix and Dua Lipa's vocal was getting lost, so say in this section here,
Dance, I could dance, I could dance. Even when the tears are flowing, they're diamonds on my face, I still keep the party going, not one hair out of place. Yes, I can. Even when the tears are flowing, they're diamonds on my face. Yes, I can.
If you listen to all the instruments in that section, what you'll notice is that you can hear everything clearly. There's nothing that's really getting lost. So everything will have its own audio. Like if you visualize the audio, you'll notice there's peaks and troughs, and it kind of goes like this. Every instrument in this track you can hear very clearly. Everything's very consistent. There's nothing that's kind of playing and then all of a sudden it gets lost and then it starts playing again. What you're trying to achieve with the mix, and what they've achieved with this, is, in terms of gain staging, that's mostly a lead vocal thing. Like when you gain stage the vocal, it's the first thing that's kind of done. Like you gain stage the vocal, not the first thing, but firstly, you obviously got to edit it. You've got to make sure it's timed, tuned, faded, everything's clean. Then after you've done your editing, one of the first steps of the mixing process is gain staging that vocal, making sure it's very consistent without any plugins. Before you even use a plugin, the vocal should sound very consistent in terms of your gain staging and your volumes and your automation. That's pretty much 80% of the job right there. Once you've got that sorted, then you think about doing compression plugins, things like that. They've obviously used the EQ to make it have more of a high-end sparkle in this particular section, but it's very consistent. You can hear it. It stands out. So they have used compression probably to make it sit more consistent, especially because it's quite a quiet vocal that she's singing. So those are probably the moves that they've made. And then in terms of saturation, a lot of these top mixers use saturation. And what I mean by saturation is it can even mean tape saturation. So using tape effects to create more of that tape saturation. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so it's definitely it's definitely a it's definitely an art in itself to make sure that the gain staging sounds natural and consistent. And in terms of reverb and effects, um, yeah, so that's kind of why you want to make sure that you've nailed your gain staging, your volume automation before you do any plugins. Because if it sounds good when it's dry, it'll sound good with effects and stuff. And each effect, each plugin that you put in will add more process into the vocal. So ideally, you don't really have to put that much processing on an instrument. If you record it really well, ideally you don't have to. But with vocals, because they're so erratic with their peaks and everything, usually most of the time it will need processing. So a lot of the time people will record it with the compressor already on when they're recording, and that's why they do that, to make it more consistent. Now with tape effects is pretty much a tape emulator plugin. So it's something like there's a I think it's called a J30 something. I've got it on my thing. I use it all the time. It's Waves J something. It's a tape emulator. And what it does is it with tape. So when instruments were originally recorded in tape, not digital. So when they were done in tape, tape provided almost like a light saturation if things were pushed a little bit too far. It'd create this, it'll cut off the high end, not the high end, it'll cut off the peaks of the frequency in a way that felt very soft. And that's why when it came to tape, a lot of the people who were pioneering sound recording, they could get away with pushing the tape a little bit, like that pushing the faders a little bit more, so that the tape almost created this distortion effect, but not distortion, but it was saturation. Now, what these tape emulating plugins do is they actually create that effect for modern day, so that a digital mix sounds saturated. It sounds like tape. And a lot of these mixers use that. And so I think I'm pretty sure, I hope I explained that properly. I probably, like, in terms of the technical side of it, like why it actually creates that sound. Because I haven't actually recorded in tape before. But the point is that these tape saturation plugins, that's the effect that they create. So in tape, you can technically, if it goes too far, it'll peak, but it won't be like peaking in digital. That they're completely different. Awesome. Thanks for coming. I hope you got a lot out of it. We'll be doing these in October every Friday at this time. So I hope to see you next time, Kathleen. Thanks for coming along. Awesome. So I hope that made sense. I kind of went on a tangent there, but I hope I answered your question about the compression and all that stuff. Anyway, so we're right at the end. As you can see there at the very end, they've basically grabbed everything that's happened so far in the track, and they've almost formed it together as one. They've grabbed a lot of the hooks that they have originally, and they've sort of fused them together. And in terms of introduction of new elements, a lot more background vocals. They have shakers both sides now. A lot more counter percussive instruments. Introduction of the strings from the pre-chorus, now doing that lead motive, but also with the the string main riff, that's playing all the way through now. It doesn't just tease you now, it's doing everything now. So now they've combined those strings together as one, and they're playing with the different hooks that the lead vocal has done and then reintroducing all of them for the finale, which is really cool. And that's pretty much it. So I think we've covered most of the stuff in that song. That was a big one. That was like an hour and a half. My computer's actually almost out of battery. That's a long way. So um, thanks for everyone who came along. That was awesome. Did you all enjoy that? Did you learn a lot from analyzing that song? Awesome. Well, I'll be here every Friday this. Oh, okay, yeah. So it's actually Thursday. Yeah, okay. So Friday AEST. So this is Australian time in Melbourne time. So for the time, just for October, it'll be this time. But then I'll be in North America on PST time in November, starting from November. So just for October, it'll be this time. And yeah, so next weekend, yeah, so next Friday's session is actually uh that'll be for the European members. So next week is actually um 5 p.m. AEST. No, wait. Yeah, 5 p.m. AEST. So the one after that will be this time again. So I'm alternating between the two. So next week will be 5 p.m. AEST, which I believe is. So if you go to the calendar section in school, you'll actually see all of the times there, and they should be automatically switched to your time zone, which is awesome. So AEST is my time, but it'll automatically be switched to yours. So I think 5 p.m. AEST to EST time would be 3 a.m. Okay, so next week you'll probably be asleep. But the week after that will be the 5 p.m. Yeah. Unless you're super keen and just want to get up at 3 a.m. But it's awesome. Well, thank you for coming. And yeah, I'll see you next time. Awesome. Bye. Thank you.